Before we get into this report, I want to slow it down for a minute. There are some words in here that don't mean much unless you understand them. So let's define this language first so everybody watching is on the same page. TCE, trichloroethylene. In plain English, it's an industrial cleaning chemical, historically used to degrease metal parts, not meant to be in soil or groundwater. It doesn't just disappear, and it can move underground and spread. This report exists because TCE ended up where it wasn't supposed to be. That's the main reason why this report even exists. Release. What release means in reports like this, it's a leak, a spill, or escape of chemical into the environment. Important details in this report: the release was tied to underground piping. The amount released is unknown. The duration of the release is unknown. There is no one who can say exactly how much or how long it leaked. Now let's pause right there for a minute. This chemical is not meant to be in the environment. This chemical does not disappear. This chemical does not go away. And the fact that they don't know how long or how much was released into the environment is alarming in itself. And it doesn't sit well with new media, and I'm pretty sure it doesn't sit well with the citizens of Milledgeville. The fact that they have no clue. They can't say if they drop 1 milliliter or 20 million gallons. They don't know. It's not, they have no clue. And that's the part that's upsetting to me. That's the part that's upsetting to a lot of people back home. All right, let's get back in it. Release area zone. In plain English, this is the original source area, the spot where the leak happened. Let's think of it like it's ground zero. Concentrations are usually the highest. Cleanup efforts are the most aggressive in this area, right? Groundwater. Before we define plume, people need to understand this. Groundwater is water that moves underground. Just as simple. It flows slowly through rock and soil. It never sits still, right? If contamination gets into groundwater, it can travel, my friend. Plume. Now, this is the biggest one. This is the term that trips people up. I'm pretty sure you guys have seen Aaron Brockovich, and you hear him talking about the plume. The plume. What is the plume? In plain English, the plume is a cloud-shaped area of contamination underground, formed as chemicals move with groundwater over time. So think about it like this: smoke drifting in the air, but underground and much slower. Right? That's the plume. It becomes a cloudy area where these chemicals have been contaminated and flowed with groundwater to this certain area, right? The plume zone, this is the area down gradient. You'll hear that a lot in this report as well. Down gradient simply means downstream underground, right? Where groundwater has carried the TCE away from the source. So this is the plume zone. This is the spread of contamination, essentially. You'll hear plume zone in this report a lot. This report notes this zone generally exceeds certain concentration levels. So when they measure the concentration levels in certain areas or certain levels on the ground, the plume zone, it tells you how far the contamination has went from the original source. And generally, you'll be surprised how far. This is not where it started at, okay? This is where it has traveled to. Keep that in mind, all right? Down gradient, this is simple but very important. The direction groundwater flows. Basically, which is way underground water is moving. You know, water is gonna always flow to the lowest level. I don't care if it's above ground, and as you can see, underground as well. Water is always flowing down. So this is important because when contamination hits, it goes down farther, and the plume zone is extended because water is always moving. It's never stagnant. All right. If water flows east underground, contamination flows east with it. All right. Pump and treat, it is exactly what it says. They pump contaminated groundwater out, treat it above ground, and put clean water back or dispose of it properly. The reality check, it works, but often super slow. Doesn't always fix contamination trapped in soil or rocks. That's why the report shifts strategies when it's talking about cleanup. Now, this word, I'm gonna probably mess it up. In situ, you'll hear that a lot. In in situ means in place, right where the contamination is, no digging everything up. So it's that in situ is like it's right there, right where, maybe wherever it is. It's kind of confusing to me, but that's a part of it, right? Bioremediation is another form of cleanup where they're using biology to break down contamination. Instead of removing soil, you help nature do the work faster. And they do that with bioaugmentation, meaning they add specific microbes that are known to break down chemicals like TCE. Think of it like this: sending in a specialist instead of just a general laborer. You're sending in a surgeon instead of just a primary care provider, right? Then they use what they call EVO, emulsified vegetable oil. Sounds harmless, and that's intentional. What it is, it's a carbon source, essentially just food. It's injected into the ground, right? And it feeds the microbes, which helps them survive and work longer. Right, the same microbes with the bioaugmentation, the bioremediation, they put these microbes, they're infused with pretty much emulsified vegetable oil, which is pretty much the food for it, which allows the microbes to live longer and continue to break down TCE. And you got to remember, TCE does not disappear. TCE has to have things like this to come in, and it needs help to break down because it doesn't belong in the environment. It doesn't belong, okay? And we'll get into the other things that may, whatever. Then they use injection wells and injection points. What they are pathway drills into the ground, used to deliver the EVOs and microbes, and can target multiple depths, even into rock. This tells you the cleanup isn't just shallow, people. It's going deep, right? It's going real deep. So if they're using the injection wells and injection points, it's not just on the surface. It's not just a cleanup on aisle 6, okay? Property line and boundary controls. Now, most people hear property line, they're thinking about property line as far as the boundary, what you own. In this report, when you hear about systems near property line, they usually mean trying to control migration, reduce contamination, leaving the site. So a property line is a barrier usually put up to try to control contamination from going any further. It's about contaminant and not just cleaning up. So a lot of times they got to stop the contamination because, again, water flows down and it flows slowly over time throughout. So to reduce the contamination area, they put up these barriers to essentially try to block it. But again, they don't know how long or how much has leaked into the environment. So the contamination, we don't know how far it's spread. We don't know where it is, right? So now that we understand the language, what CTE is, what TCE is, what a plume is, and what these zones actually mean, let's walk through what this report says was found, what was done, and what questions still remain. Okay, what is this document? All right, it's a voluntary remediation program, VRP, progress report number 5. Facility, Rheem Manufacturing Company, location 138 Robinson Mill Road, Millersville, Georgia. Date, June 2016. Oversight, Georgia Environmental Protection Division. The purpose of this report, to explain what contamination was found, what cleanup actions were taken between November 2015 and April 2016, how effective those actions were, and what Rheem plans to do next to meet Georgia Type 5 risk reduction standards. What happened? All right. Rheem manufactured air conditioning units and furnaces from 1978 to 2009. The site is 41.12 acres. At the time of this report, the plant was vacant, fenced, and secured. Interesting. TCE was first released or stated in this report September 1988. Rheem discovered and reported a TCE release. The release came from underground piping. The piping connected to 2 above ground TCE storage tanks to a parts washer. The critical emission in this report, and this is the most alarming thing, the quantity of TCE release is unknown. The duration of CTE release is unknown. The report itself says they don't know how much leaked or how long it leaked. Now let's pause right there for a good second, people, because Rheem had been operating for 10 years before they even found out that TCE was being leaked. And as we stated before in the vocabulary, the plume zone by this time is, you can't, there's no way to identify it. If the leak had happened for over a decade, at least, or at most, at best, at the most, it could have been the day they opened. But let's say it was only 5 years. Let's say if it was only 2 years. We don't know. And again, how much? We have no clue. This report has no clue. We don't know how far this stuff has creeped into the groundwaters of Milledgeville. 10 years, just think about that for a minute, people. They didn't find out until September 1988, right? They didn't find out. And they didn't start groundwater pumping until the following year, 89. The groundwater pump and treat began in 1989 to 1990. There's no specific date. And they continued doing this treatment for decades. They used recovery wells and air stripping to remove TCE from groundwater. So it was in the water, people. Why pump and treat wasn't enough? The report later admits it does not address vital zone soils. It cannot capture all TCE migrants off property. And it's not a comprehensive long-term solution on its own. This is what the report says. This is not new media saying it. This is their own report. And the fact that they admit that TCE migrated off property. Let that sink in, right? The plume, what moved and where? Plume identification by 2011, people. What is that? From 88 to 2011, how many years is that? I ain't that good at math, but that's a long ass time. Rheem identified a groundwater VOC plume. You're talking about almost 30 years later. You identify the plume. And you don't know how long it had been leaking, and you don't know how much. But you identify a plume in 2011. The plume extended off property to the southwest. Off property. The reports divide contamination into release area zone, the original leak location, highest contaminations, or the highest concentration, and the primary cleanup focus. Then they have the plume zone, right? An area where groundwater carried TCE down gradient. Identified using monitoring wells includes off-property monitoring. The release area is where it started. The plume is where it traveled. Keep that in mind. And it's traveled off property. Now, mind you, they don't even know when it started. They don't even know how much, and they don't even know for how long. And they've clearly admitted in this report that it traveled off property. That's big, people. This is their words, not mine. All right, they're monitoring and data collection. All right, what they did, they installed off-property monitoring wells, sampled groundwater at multiple depths, tracked concentration levels over time. All right, why depth matters. The reports separate shallow groundwater, all right, greater than 50 feet, all right, less than 50 feet, and deep groundwater, greater than 50 feet. Figures show contamination in both zones, meaning this was not just a surface level issue. They dug deeper than 50 feet and still found TCE. Property line control. Remember, the property line has nothing to do with the boundaries of the actual property. This is where they're trying to control the contamination. But how can you control the contamination when you don't know how long it's been going on? They got an acronym ART, Accelerated Remediation Technology, right? This system combines air sparging and soil vapor extraction, subsurface flushing, in situ air stripping, all right? Right there in the place. Remember that word came from the vocabulary. Why it exists to intercept and treat contamination before it moves further off-site. Oh, golly, it's been 30 years, people. Right? Expansion. Initially, 2 wells expanded to 5 wells. Final expansion in April and May of 2016. Some wells were later deemed redundant and shut down to optimize capture. This system is about containment and control, not erasing history. So basically, they're just trying to control the mess. And now they have a new company there that builds first responders, ambulance, and fire trucks. They've inherited a mess. Now, mind you, Rheem property is 41 acres. 41 acres. And the fact that TCE was found off property, that's big, bro. That's huge. 41 acres? How does it get off the property? And the fact that it was found off the property draws even bigger concern. All right, the big shift and why they changed strategy, right? The report makes a key pivot. All right, pump and treatment alone it wouldn't finish the job. Rheem evaluated other technologies, ISCO, chemical oxidation, enhanced bioremediation, right? In situ bioremediation chosen for the release area and plume zone. So they stepped up their efforts in order to contain the spill or the release in the plume zone. But keep in mind, guys, they had no idea of how long the release had been going on. They had no idea of how much, right? And their reports, I've talked to several employees, past employees from Rheem, where water was at one time shipped in, where you weren't allowed to drink the water. At one point in the paint department, some type of fluid, chemical, something was coming up out of the floor, right? It's even reports the new building that they put is all on top of the chemicals. This is something that went on and they knew it. They knew it. And even in this remediation report, they admit it. Right? They admit the shit. All right, in situ bioremediation, what they're doing is, all right, this is exactly what that is. They inject EVO, emulsified vegetable oil. It's really just a food source. Dioxide bacteria is another foreign substance, another man-made substance essentially, that goes in and breaks down the CTE. All right. How does that work? It creates anaerobatic conditions, right? Promotes reductive dechlorination, breaks TCE into less harmful compounds over time. So essentially what it does, it just breaks it down, but it doesn't get rid of it. TCE doesn't disappear essentially, right? This is something that doesn't go away. This is why it draws so many concerns here in new media. This is a compound that doesn't go away. They can only break it down. They can only break it down, right? They use injection walls and direct push points into the soil and to weathered bedrock. So they're going deep, people. Why are they doing this? Right? They're trying to further prevent the contamination area, the plume zone. They're trying to stop it from spreading. And it's already spread it off property, and they don't know how long it's been going on, and they don't know how much it's been going on. That's alarming. That's alarming in itself, Milledgeville. That's something that should bring some concerns as far as what really happened on that property at 138 Robinson Mill Road. And why has this not drawing national media concerns? Why does it take a bluegrass media outlet like New Media to bring this thing to light? That's alarming in itself, because the powers that be control media. Instead of pulling contaminants out, they're breaking it down where it sits. They will have to undig the whole earth to take it out. So they got to break it down where it sits because they don't know how far it's gone. they would have to dig to the depths of hell to get it out of there. Rheem conducted a field treatability study. 2 in-well test units confirmed site conditions could support bioremediation. Results supported full-scale implementation, right? The report clearly states 1 recovery well was immediately shut down. Other ones continued temporarily to help distribute injected materials. Within 1 year, remaining wells were expected to be discontinued. Future management would rely on bioremediation, ART systems, monitor natural attention, right? The risk and exposure analysis, the reports evaluate soil risk, groundwater risk, and vapor intrusion, right? Include sub-lab depressurization systems, off-property 6 evaluation, risk reduction standards comparison. All right. The report framed this as risk management, not zero impact, right? So what the report is really saying, in a nutshell, a TCE release occurred in 1988. The amount and the duration is unknown, right? Groundwater contamination migrated off property. Pump and treat helped but wasn't enough. Rheem shifted to biological breakdown underground. Property line system focused on containment. So they created so much like a barrier to prevent further containment, but they don't even know the extent of the initial contamination. Cleanup is ongoing and not finished. Now, before we go any further, we got to talk about what folks in Milledgeville been whispering about for years. Not rumors, concerns. And if you've had family that work out there or you grew up around it, you already know what I mean. And I'm not here to diagnose anyone. I'm not here to say this caused that. But I am here to do what new media is supposed to do. Put verified information on the table so the community can make sense of the risk and ask the right questions. All right? The health discussion equals general information, not medical advice. All right? This is not medical advice by any means. This is just general information. All right? What TCE is in plain English. All right? Let's start with the chemical everybody keeps bringing up. TCE, trichloroethylene. TCE is a chemical that's been used a lot in industrial settings, especially as a degreaser, cleaner for metal parts, right? And the big issue with TCE is it doesn't just go away, people. It can show up in soil, groundwater, and even the air inside buildings through something called vapor intrusion, where chemical vapors move up from the ground into indoor air. How people are exposed, all right? When we talk health concerns, we're talking about exposure pathways. That's the science term for how could this get into a person's body. Common pathways discussed with TCE contaminations include breathing vapors, especially indoors if vapor intrusion is present. All right, drinking contaminated water or contact with contaminated soil or water doing work or cleanup. All right. The cancer question, right? What TCE is known or linked to, right? Now here's the part everybody wants answered. Cancer. According to major health and research agencies, TCE is considered a human carcinogen, meaning it can cause cancer in people. Here are the cancer types that keep coming up in official science summaries. Kidney cancer, the strongest and most consistent with evidence. Non-Hodgkin lymphoma, recognized in multiple public health summaries. Evidence varies by review, but it is repeatedly flagged. Liver cancer, often described as some evidence, limited evidence in people, still flagged as a concern by EPA summaries. So when people say TCE is connected to cancer, that's not just internet talk. That's based on evaluations from agencies like the ATSDR and the CDC, the National Toxicology Program, and EPA summaries. But let me be crystal clear. A general link in science is not the same as proving any one person's cancers came from any one place. That takes individual exposure history, medical evaluation, and data, right? And cancer is not the only concern that shows up in the official record. Federal health agencies and EPA summaries also flag non-cancer harms from TCE exposure, including effects of nervous system, liver, kidneys, immune system, and reproductive fetal development. One example that gets specifically mentioned in major health summaries is fetal heart-related development risk, which is why pregnant women and families are often highlighted as sensitive populations in contamination cases. Any report section references sensitive receptors, residential areas, schools, indoor air, or risk assessment language. This is what we got. What the community has been saying for years, what the science of TCE can do to the human body, and what the remediation reports documents, where and when and what was found, what's still unknown, and what questions must be answered, right? And this is why folks are uneasy. So folks, let's bring this all together. We just laid out the facts that many have been whispering about for years. We put the spotlight on what TCE is, what kinds of cancer and health risk it's linked to, and how long it's been a concern right here in Milledgeville. We're not here to stir up panic. We're here to shine light so everyone knows what's at stake and can push for answers. And like I said, this isn't about pointing fingers today. It's about making sure people understand this isn't just some recent thing. We're talking about potential contamination that might have roots going back decades. That's nearly 40 years of people possibly being exposed without the full story. And you know what else? That's something we can't just let stay hidden. So here's what I'm asking you. If this hit home for you, share this out. Let's get more eyes on it. Let's get more people informed, and let's keep pushing for transparency. If you got a story or concern, drop it in the comments. Reach out to us, jump in our DMs. We're going to keep digging because we're not done. This is just the start. This is only the beginning. And hey, if you found this valuable, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Share this video and let's keep this conversation going. Because together we can make sure the people of Milledgeville and everywhere else get the transparency they deserve. And remember, this is new media. We're not your middleman media, and we don't do cover-ups. We're here to bring you the truth that matters from the ground up. Stay informed, stay empowered, and always be great today. Peace.